Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest has over 2.5 decades of experience in the consulting industry, founded Fifth Element Associates, and is the author of the nonfiction book Leadership Selling. His name is Joe Candido, and my interview with Joe will follow the note-taking sounds. Joe Candido, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, as you said, I'm Joe Candido. I'm a business consultant. I've been doing this work for over 30 years. I focus on helping companies grow, and that's really mostly about working with leadership teams, setting strategy, and then implementing typically a sales solution. It might be sales strategy, sales methodology, that sort of thing. But it's really about helping companies serve their customers better. That's the heart of the work that I do.
As you I don't think you actually mentioned this specifically, but you have over 2.5 decades of experience in the consulting industry. What has your work in the consulting industry been like?
Well, it's really quite interesting. I was lucky early on in my career. I got into the tech sector when it was, just kind of coming into its own. And so because of that, I started working with a wide range of companies in the telecommunications field. And then, of course, in IT and technology, Apple, Google, all the big companies, as well as service providers like Verizon or TELUS or AT&T. So, my career, I think I was lucky that I was in the right place at the right time. And I wound up working with these companies that really had some very big challenges in terms of figuring out their growth strategy, understanding technology, its implication in the marketplace. And so all of that, allowed me to be hired by some really exceptional companies in that space, where I learned a lot and got exposure to, some sophisticated clients, and then went out on my own and continued doing that work. So, today the work is about, as I mentioned earlier, it's understanding what's working and what's not. And it's pretty specialized today in terms of, are they achieving their goals from a sales perspective? Most companies are not completely satisfied with their sales results. I like to say I've never met a CEO that feels like they have too much revenue or too much profit. So they're usually looking for an improvement in some area. And, that's my job, is to help them identify what can be improved and then fix it.
You've written a business nonfiction book, which is titled Leadership Selling. Without spoiling too much of Leadership Selling, what is it about?
Well, it's really about a different way of selling. There's lots of books on the market about sales. And before I wrote this book, I really hesitated because I didn't want to write another book that, was very similar to the others. Yet I've been doing this work for over 30 years and have developed an approach that's unique and highly effective. And so I finally decided that instead of writing a how-to book about sales, I would write my book, Leadership Selling, which is really geared towards owners, founders, CEOs, and sales leaders. It's geared towards the folks that are in the leadership role around sales. And I talk first off about what doesn't work. Why is traditional selling dead? That gets people's attention. What do you mean it's dead? Tell me more about that. I'm doing sales and I'm getting results, so it can't really be dead. And of course, it's not dead. But, I want to get their attention and say, hey, traditional selling doesn't work like it used to. Maybe it did work really well in the past, but each year it's less effective. And there's some very specific reasons why. And the book dives into those. And then I present the alternative. Here's a better way of selling. It's called Leadership Selling. And let me explain what it is. And so the book kind of goes through those elements. And I can do that if you'd like here. But, it does provide a real alternative to traditional selling that's quite refreshing and very effective. So that's really why I wrote the book. Is I finally decided that I had a message that wasn't being told and could be really helpful to the marketplace.
What is traditional selling, and why is it dead, or more accurately, dying?
Okay. Yeah. So traditional selling, and let me put some guardrails up. The type of selling I'm referring to is business to business, and it's typically a more complex product. So, for example, let's say that you manufacture coffee cups, and they cost 50 cents, and you sell them to anybody who wants to buy them. That's not what I'm referring to. That's a very transactional commodity style selling. The type of selling that I'm talking about is where the product or the service is more complex. There's options to it. The sales cycle might be longer. It could be 60 days, but more typically is probably 3 or 6 or 9 or 12 months. Could be 2 years. So more complex. This is where we have a sales team that targets particular companies, and they go in there and build relationships and sell. So that's the framework of what I'm referring to when I talk about selling. So traditional selling is that you pitch your product. You go in there and you ask pain questions. You find out what keeps you up at night. You talk about your company. You talk about your product. You sell to who you believe is a decision maker, which might be someone in procurement. It might be a middle manager in a particular department that would use your product or service. And that goes on every single day. And there's a lot of cold calling that's done here. And a lot of it is dialing for dollars, where you buy a list with names and phone numbers and email addresses, and you call up those prospects and you say almost the exact same thing to every single one of them. It's a relatively scripted approach. Hi, this is Joe from Acme Company. I've got this amazing product that I think will be really effective for you. We've sold it to your competitors. You should take a look at it. Right? It's it's not innovative. It's not personalized. It's just a high velocity. Make as many calls as you can. Target the person you think is going to use the product, talk about your company, ask a few questions and get them to buy. That's traditional selling. And believe it or not, everybody shakes their head when I talk about it. And I say, you know what? It's done all the time. Everybody thinks they're better than that, but most aren't. Very few companies really have a strong sales strategy. And, the first question that I say to them when they challenge me on why is traditional selling not working is I ask them, are you getting the results you want? And then it gets really quiet, right? Are you getting the results you want? Is it really working for you? What's the turnover of your employees, your sales team? What's your close ratio? How many calls do you make? How many meetings do you get? More importantly, do you get second meetings? Because getting a first meeting is good. But if you don't get a second meeting, then either you didn't execute on the first meeting, or you were talking to the wrong person, or they weren't qualified. I mean, the list goes on and on. But the point is, the success rate of that approach is very low. So, that's why I say it's dead and it doesn't work. And none of us like it when we get calls like that. We know the person doesn't care about us. We know all they care about is making a sale, and that every single thing they say is designed to get me to buy from them. And it's not really about me. It's about them. So it doesn't work. There you go.
There are 4 stages of leadership selling that you describe. What are each of them?
Sure. So the 4 stages are engage, explore, resolve, and support. And those stages are complementary to a company that already has a sales cycle in place, or if they don't, they can adopt those stages. But either way, those stages would come into play because there's certain things that you want to do at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the sales journey with the customer. Okay. And so the engage stage is where you build a relationship. It's all about trust and credibility and getting them to be comfortable with you. And so you don't do any selling in the engage stage. And this is a huge difference between leadership selling and traditional selling. Traditional selling is, you're pitching out of the gate. You're like pitching the moment you open your mouth. And the engage stage of leadership selling has no pitching, no talking about product, service, or your company. What you are is an advisor or a thought leader, and you're sharing meaningful information with the customer about their industry, something that would be helpful to them. Okay. And so this is how the consulting firms do it, like Deloitte, PwC, Accenture. When they work with a client, they provide best practices, insights, and information. And the client wants to hear about that because it's about their business or their competitors or their customers. So leadership selling adopts the same approach, which says, I'm going to share information that is about my customer's business. And through that process, they will start to find me credible. They'll start to build a relationship with me. They'll start to trust me. So that's the first big difference is no selling, go build a relationship. That's engage stage. Explore stage is when the customer's ready, not when you want, but when the customer's ready, they'll invite you to learn about their business. Salespeople want to ask about the customer's business very early, and this is not advisable by me. If I start asking someone about their business before they know me, there's no trust and there's no benefit to them for sharing information. Why would I share the information? The customer's thinking to themselves, I don't get anything out of it. So once you build a relationship and they think you can help them, then they're willing to share information because they think you might be able to help them. So that's the explore stage. And this is where we do a proper discovery, learn about their business. And most importantly, Aaron, I want to learn about what are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? What's working and what's not working? And if I can understand that, I can then evaluate what my company does and see if I can help them close the gap, achieve the goals, achieve the business outcomes. So the discovery is a learning process for the salesperson to learn about the customer's business. Again, there's no selling. So in the first two stages, we don't sell. First, we build trust in a relationship, then we learn about their business. No selling. Third stage is the resolve stage. This is where we sell. Now we're ready to make a recommendation. Okay, we know about their business. They trust us. We understand where the gaps are between their desired state their current state and their desired state. Okay, now we can make a recommendation, and not only can we make a recommendation, but we can be very specific about how this recommendation is going to achieve their goals, close the gap, and even offer them a return on investment value proposition, because during the explore stage, they will have shared that information with us. This is what we're trying to do, and if we can achieve it, this is our benefit. If we can't achieve it, this is the consequence. So we present all of that to them in the resolve stage. We sell during the resolve stage. And I always say, look, if you don't believe in it, don't recommend it. But if you believe in it, recommend it and put your whole heart behind it and say to them, you absolutely should buy this because I know it's going to work for you. Okay, so we either believe in it or we don't. And if we do, we should be selling. And if we don't, we're not ready to recommend. And then the final stage is the support stage. The support stage is where we deliver on the promise. We make sure that after the customer buys, they have a good experience. That whether whoever implements it in our company, that they do it properly, that the customer's satisfied. And we do this for a bunch of reasons. First off, it's our integrity. Secondly, we want the customer to be happy so that we can get repeat business from them. This gives us an opportunity to expand our relationship with them. And lastly, we want them to recommend us to others. So the support stage often isn't included in selling at all. It's like close a deal and move on to the next one. But actually, the support stage is critical because this is where we are ensure the customer is happy and we get repeat business and referrals to other opportunities. So those are the 4 stages.
Another concept of yours is give to get. What is give to get and why is it so important?
Yeah, so give to get comes into play during the engage stage. And this is where the salesperson gives information without any strings attached. Instead of going into the opportunity, probing, asking, selling, pitching, we go in and say, hey, here's an article that I read from a respected third party, maybe a consulting firm, someone in your industry. And this information, I think, might be really important to you in your role in your company. So we're providing thought leadership. We're sharing information in order to build trust. What do we get back? We get a relationship over time. Okay. If I prove myself, if I can demonstrate, I understand your industry, I know something about your business, I have some ideas or some information to share with you, I'm providing credible third-party reports, white papers, documents that are helpful, they're going to start to recognize that I might be a good resource for them. So I give first, and that starts to build a relationship. And before you know it, they'll talk to me and we can start to have a conversation about their business. So give to get is a critical concept and practice for leadership selling, because it's really about establishing yourself, building credibility, building trust, and creating an opportunity where the prospect or customer is comfortable engaging with me.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions now about kind of inside the writing and publishing process of your book. What were the easiest and hardest aspects of writing a business nonfiction book for you?
Yeah, I'm smiling. I'm going to start with the hardest first. I have been doing this for 30 years, so I knew what the topic was, and I had lots of content already created from training and coaching and consulting. So my problem was narrowing it down, developing a game plan, because I had too much information. And so that was really hard for me. And I didn't have clarity on who my target audience was. I didn't have clarity on what the main themes were. I had so much information, it was all jumbled and running around in my head. And so I actually worked with a strategist to help me organize my thoughts. And that was the hardest part, was really identifying that target that I wanted to reach, the main theme of the book, and what I would call the table of content, the main topics in the order in which I wanted to tell my story through the book. That part took a long time. It was really funny. Probably off and on, it took years, because I would think about it and then stall out, and I'd start and I'd stop and I'd start again and I'd stop. And, it was really difficult. But once I finally got that part, created, and I did need someone to collaborate to do that, Aaron. I couldn't do it on my own. I had to collaborate with somebody else because I was in my head too much. And so when I finally, got someone to be my strategist and help me think through the main themes of the book and the target and all of that, once I got that done, I wrote the book in 6 weeks. That was easy. The editing was tough. All the little details like creating the graphics and the cover and, putting it all together, the mechanical parts were time consuming. But the two big ones were what I already said, getting my strategy and my target, that was hard. And the writing actually was easy, because once I had that table of content, I just cranked it out. I knew what I needed to say.
Is leadership selling independently, traditionally, or hybrid published? And what was it like getting leadership selling published?
Well, I was originally going to self-publish because business books typically don't sell high volume. It's not like, you're going to become a New York Times bestseller, right? Often business books are used by the people that write them as a testimonial of their own capabilities. And for me, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, I'll write this book, I'll share it with anybody who's interested, and it'll give them value as it is. And also, hopefully, they'll want to do business with me. So for me, I had two motives. One was to get this concept out into the marketplace as best I could, and also use it as a marketing tool for myself. So I originally planned on self-publishing for those reasons. And what happened is I discovered a publisher that wanted to work with me, and that was really terrific. It was kind of unexpected, and they played a really important role in the layout and the graphics. They helped me with the strategy, as I mentioned. All of those pieces that I didn't know how to do. It is a unique industry, and if you don't know how to do it, there's ways to find out, but it can be slow and take more time. And so, my publisher was really quite helpful to me in terms of greasing the skids for that. And as a result, I was able to produce a Kindle, a paper, and a hard copy all at the same time. And I now just recorded an Audible, which will be out at the end of May. So, that really made a big difference for me. And, quite honestly, I'm shocked at the success of the book. It has sold way more than I thought it would, and which is wonderful. And actually in January, Leadership Selling achieved Amazon bestseller status in business consulting, sales skills, and strategy management. So, really shocking, that it's done that well. And I think part of it is because it was professionally published, and I was able to publish it, as I say, in the multiple formats that made it easier and more accessible for readers. So it's pretty amazing.
To finish this interview, I have a couple of questions about similar topics that the business world deals with, but they're not totally identical. For the first of these questions, what are the main differences between sales enablement and sales performance?
Yeah, so sales enablement is a very common term used today. It's the big trend in the sales space. Sales enablement is really a bunch of tools that enable sales to be more effective. So it might be a CRM tool to keep track of opportunities, or it could be an inbound marketing tool that is used for distribution of content. It's training. It could be online training. Usually it is, or it could also be in-person training. But it's a whole series of tools, funnel, forecasting, all of those things that are designed to help the salesperson be more organized and efficient and successful, and provide reporting to management. And so sales enablement is critical. However, I have a concern right now. It's so hot in the marketplace that a lot of money is being spent on it, and companies aren't getting results. And the reason why they're not getting results is they're neglecting sales performance. Okay. So again, I think sales enablement is important. We need training. We need measurements. We need funnel. We need forecasting. We need reporting. We need all those things. Absolutely. Salespeople need, email and CRM and all these things to do their job. However, they also need, skill and training, and they need competencies, and they need coaching. They need other things to be successful. So I think of enablement is more of the what, and performance is more of the how. And so a good example is, if I'm a sales leader, a report might tell me that one of my salespeople isn't closing deals. They're stuck. The deals aren't moving forward. So if I talk to that salesperson and say, hey, your deals are stalling, they're not moving forward, your closing time is very long, the salesperson already knows that. You're not telling them anything they don't know. They're struggling with that. They know what they're struggling with. So that's helpful information. But what really is helpful is fixing it. Saying to the salesperson, I see that you're having trouble closing deals. I see that it's taking you longer than expected. I'm going to help you. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how you're going to sell differently. I'm going to observe you. We're going to team sell. I'm going to get you some training. We're going to do some coaching. We're going to set some goals. I've identified that, there's a competency that you're soft in, and we want to make you stronger in that area. So we're going to focus on that. That's performance. That's sales performance. And sales leaders need to be coaches. They need to be mentors. They need to be trainers. They need to be thinking about, how do I drive higher performance with my team individually and as a total team? And I encourage sales leaders to spend more time and money there and less on enablement, because enablement is good enough and it's not going to close deals. If you double down the amount of money you spend on enablement, you're not going to double your sales. But if you spend 10 or 20% more on training and coaching and mentoring, you're going to increase your sales. Okay. So that's my whole frustration, is we're trading performance for enablement, and it's a bad trade. Yes, enablement matters, but performance is where the rubber meets the road. Put most of your energy there, and you'll be much happier with the results.
One final question. What are the main differences between managing and coaching?
Yeah, so I just kind of hit them, actually. In some ways, Management is all the enablement activities. Okay. Management is running the business. It's running the team. It's making sure people are, doing their job on a daily basis. It's reporting. It's dealing with, a whole variety of things that are operational. Okay. Coaching is helping people execute better. It's building competencies and skills. It's improving attitudes. It's changing behaviors. It's investing in the character of the individual or the team. And, that's the leadership function. The leadership function is about vision, strategy, culture, values. Those are all the leadership functions, and those things drive behavior and performance way more than management, which is, you need to get to work at a certain time, you need to do a certain number of activities per week, and you have to fill out a report on Friday. That's managing. Yeah, that's important. But leading is way more important, and coaching is way more important. So again, it's the same conversation about enablement versus performance as management versus leadership and management versus coaching.
Joe, you were an insightful guest for this podcast. I thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Aaron, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
It was wonderful to interview Joe, and as always, I'll include relevant links in the text description of the episode. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright 2025, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.